It seems as if your friendly neighborhood Washington football team is now at the tip of the spear. Welcome to the Sidelines Washington Podcast, brought to you by the Sidelines Sports Network. I'm your host and head of NFL operations here, Parker Hamlett. Make sure if you're listening, you give us a follow or review. Also, if you're watching us in the YouTube realm, make sure you subscribe to our notifications as well. The question of the day now in the comments is, has COVID ended the Washington football team season? So I'm sure they'll get plenty of you talking. It seems to already be kind of on the Twitterverse as of right now. You know, Sunday is definitely a day that a lot of us are ready to forget. But not a lot of things have gone well for the Burgundy and Gold since Sunday, since you last heard from us here on the sidelines. But this weekend, we have the 6-7 Philadelphia Eagles. And joining me to talk all things Washington football team and Eagles is a friend of the show, senior analyst at Pro Football Focus or Parker Football Focus, depending on who you ask. My guy, Nick. First of all, I got to say welcome back, man. Also, I got to just start off by bringing up the Landon Collins grade because I was loving what I was reading about it. You know, I feel like a lot of people feel like I use PFF as a crutch. You know, of course, Landon Collins got a 36.9 grade. As everybody knows, he had a pretty solid performance, at least eye test is concerned. I think it was the first safety since Adrian Wilson back in 2006 to have 2 sacks and interceptions. So explain to Sidelines watchers a little bit kind of how that grading system works. I mean, at first glance, you see the stat line, you're like, oh my God, how could you grade him at 36?
Yeah. So first off, the 2 sacks, people might have seen it on my Twitter. I posted his 2 sacks. His 2 sacks came because he was the closest person when Dak ran out of bounds and when Dak slid. He never tackled anybody for the sacks, and the combined total yards for the sacks was -1 yards. So he did nothing out of the ordinary to earn those sacks. So those are just 0 graded plays for us. All right, he's not doing anything there. Now, the interception is a good play, but it was a wild overthrow by Dak. He didn't have to break on anything. The ball was just thrown to him, and he had to make a good catch, which he did. That was about the end of his positive plays there for that game. We charged the Amari Cooper touchdown to him. They were in some sort of red zone cover 4 hybrid look, and he's looking like he needs to take anything inside and leave that underneath stuff to Cole Holcomb. Holcomb went to the underneath. They both went to the underneath. Amari Cooper wide open. Had a missed tackle. Another time he got juked out of his shoes, and we couldn't even call it a missed tackle because he didn't actually touch the guy. So, yeah, it wasn't a great game, but the box score looks incredible.
I mean, I just kind of saw you going back and forth. I saw some of the clips, and I was like, I can't wait for Nick to come on and talk about this because, you know, people like to give you guys flack for some of those grades. But, I mean, if you actually watch the game, this is kind of why you can't judge everything at face value when it comes to statistics and kind of why the more deep dive on analytics. Defense. What'd you say?
Especially on defense. It's tough to look at that box score stats on defense and try to, like, take anything away from it, really. Because, I mean, a lot of times interceptions aren't the guy that is even making the play. Tackles aren't the guy that's making the play. It's just a nightmare when you're looking at that box score.
And I'm glad you kind of put a spotlight on how errant of a throw that was by Dak Prescott as well. I mean, like I said, you look at Landon Collins' final stats, but then you really get some of the context and watch the game tape, which was better than I thought it was on defense for the Washington football team now that I watched it a couple of times. But Landon, you know, even though we were excited when he hadn't made any plays at all in 2021, definitely didn't make enough to be one of the highest graded defenders per PFF, Parker Football Focus, as Rio would say. But today, make sure you check out Homage, brought to you by them. They're our sponsor. Promo code SSN Sports 21 for 20% off your order at homage.com today. So make sure you guys go over to homage.com, take advantage of our limited time offer with Homage. You know, honestly, Nick, at the rate we're going now, heading into Sunday, I feel like they should just call off the whole damn NFL weekend. You know, the Wash football team's already hobbling in as it is. Rivera says that these injuries aren't insurmountable, but it's starting to stack up so much against the Wash football team that I could definitely disagree with his statement there. You know, a couple people in question. Of course, Taylor Heineke, one of them. I'm a big believer in kind of have been all year, part of the quote-unquote Taylor gang, as some people would say. You know, still trying to make a run at the 7th seed for the Wash football team. I think the Wash football team is the only 6-7 team in the NFC that can qualify for the postseason as of right now. So the Wash football team still controls their destiny. Seems like Taylor's elbow is a little bit more of a concern than his knee. Seems like MRI and everything came back positive for him. For me, Nick, it's just all about consistency at the quarterback position. You know, Taylor does some things well and some things very poorly. And, you know, Taylor now this is the 4th consecutive season for the Washington football team where they've had 3 or more quarterbacks throw a pass. You know, Dallas has a 3-game lead. Yeah, I mean, that number just blows my mind. And, Dallas now has a 3-game lead in the NFC East, and kind of it is what it is mentality. But, I mean, what do you make from an analytics standpoint of Taylor Heinicke's performance in 2021? Everybody's kind of already saying, well, that 4 games was fun, but do you feel like they can kind of salvage after everything that occurred on Sunday against the Cowboys in a really tough loss?
Yeah, I think they can. I think the defense, like you said, after like a second look, the defense played pretty well. Dak was really bad. And they capitalized off of that. Defenses, they've completely turned it around, which kind of gives you a chance every single game. And then after that, it just comes down to which Heinicke we get, good or bad. And that's the problem with him if you're trying to look towards the future of Taylor Heinicke, is there is zero consistency there. And some can argue that there was some consistency over that 4-game stretch, 4-game win streak. But a lot of it was turnover luck. And people hate hearing that when you're talking about quarterbacks, but a lot of times, whether you have a good or a bad game, is turnover luck. And that's something that our grades take into account. And he had a couple times where there were just dropped interceptions. And the Raiders game is a perfect example. He had one of the worst throws he's had this season in that game-winning drive. But nobody remembers it because we won the game. And I don't care, okay, because we won the game.
Sometimes better to be lucky than good. I mean, yes, I'm not going to argue that.
100%. But when you're looking at it from, an outside perspective, and if you're trying to see if Heinicke is the future, it's just you need consistency, and there's been absolutely zero consistency there.
Multiple games, if people just go back around the tape. And like you said, even in some of the wins for the Washington football team in this 4-game winning streak, he has made unforgivable decisions and ones that could have – I mean, ask Trayvon Moehrig. I mean, if he actually catches that ball in that Raiders game, we're talking a very different outcome. So we're talking about the season being over. But, Washington football team kind of just playing for bragging rights, or at least getting close to the NFC East against the Dallas Cowboys. Ended up not coming out on top, but on to Philadelphia. And speaking of Philadelphia, and speaking of consistency, if there's one player who's been consistent against the Philadelphia Eagles, that's been one Terry McLaurin, another guy who is possibly unavailable this Sunday due to concussion protocol. But 22 catches, 256 yards, and 4 career games against the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's been kind of an Eagle killer in the burgundy and gold. But with the lack of depth at wide receiver, no matter what Rivera says, is not having Terry in this wide receiver core Sunday insurmountable? Because the closer we get and the more people get added to this COVID report, which we're going to get into, I just feel like this isn't something they're going to be able to stomach.
Yeah, you can't lose Terry. He's the only guy that gets open consistently. And his stats are almost completely reliant on whether you get good or bad Taylor Heinicke. And so he's always open. I mean, he's always open. Every single game, there are plays where he's just missed when he's wide open. So, yeah, if he goes down, you don't have anybody out there that can consistently separate. Cam Sims will do it every now and again and come up with, some crazy highlight catches. But you need somebody out there that can consistently separate it. He's the only one that can do it. So, if he's out, I don't really know how they score any points.
And that's exactly how I felt. That hard landing on Sunday in a very poorly underthrown ball. Now that I've kind of watched it a couple of times, it just, you look around the other faces in this wide receiver room. You got Humphries, 42 snaps. I think DeAndre Carter and Cam Sims both had 40 snaps as well. Bates had 48 snaps, having more snaps than a returning RSJ. So not a lot of receiving options. Kind of have some guys trying to get their way back in the rotation as well. But you say that it's all reliant on Terry McLaurin. I certainly can't disagree with you there. But I feel like a big part of this winning streak as well for the Washington football team was controlling the ball, running the ball. And, you can't run the ball when you're facing 10-yard average on third down like they were on Sunday, which is an absolutely crazy number. So do you feel like it was more of a case of good defense, or Taylor Heinicke in this offense just can't play from behind? I mean, they are very reliant on play action.
I don't know if I'd say that they can't play from behind. It definitely makes it harder on them because when you are playing from ahead, you can kind of rely on those 3-4 yard rush gains. But like you said, if you're behind the sticks, you have to throw the ball. And then if you have bad Taylor Heinicke on a day, then it's tough to come back from. But I don't know. I'll never count Heinicke out. I've sounded very negative on him, but he's the most exciting quarterback I've watched for Washington in a long, long time. Whether that's good or bad exciting. This is what I thought we would get from Fitzpatrick without all the scrambling and, creating out of structure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I know it's a terrible answer, but it really does all depend on what he does from the quarterback position. The NFL is so reliant on the quarterback And a running game is really nice to have. And when you can sort of get that lead and control the clock like you want to, that's incredible. But it's so much harder to put together those 15, 16 play drives when you're consistently running the ball, getting 3-4 yards. It's obviously a lot easier when you get those big chunk plays. So obviously the lead is important for them. I don't think it's impossible to overcome if they go down early. But again, you just need a good Taylor Heinicke.
And, you can only give us so much of Taylor Heinicke when the Wash football team is losing at the point of attack as much as they were on Sunday. Only Cornelius, Lucas, Brandon Scherf, and Eric Flowers were the only members of the Wash football team offense that played every snap. And I don't have to delve into the grades too much to tell the listeners that none of those guys had a very good day against this Dallas front rush. So, but I mean, the offensive line.
I will say one thing about that, though, with the offensive line for like the last game is Heinicke a lot of times really screws them over. The way he maneuvers in the pocket and the way he just constantly drifts backwards. And when it works, it's incredible and it looks fantastic. But a lot of times he's really screwing over his offensive line by, dropping to 10 yards and then backpedaling another 4 or 5. The offensive line doesn't have any leverage at that point.
I'll definitely say
for another 5 yards.
That definitely doesn't help the offensive line either.
No.
But there were some, and I know you watched the tape, but there were some reps where Brandon Scherf, all pro right guard, was just getting pancaked. I mean, it was crazy. All year I've not seen this offensive line get dominated the way that they did. I mean, there's just like I said, it was all at the point of attack. It all starts up front, and I feel like that's really a big disconnect for a lot of people. I feel like some people kind of like picking on Taylor when everything's going wrong, going to ride his coattails and everything going right. But like you said, he's definitely not doing them any favors with his moxie and all these plays that he tries to extend. Sometimes the play just isn't there, and that's where I feel like Kyle Allen really came in and kind of, sunk his teeth in and kind of just weathered the storm a little bit and just kind of did all the simple things he needed to do. Of course, not an incredible stat line with him coming in late in the game. Taylor was going to play all 4 quarters if Ron Rivera let him. And Ron Rivera says he's still the quarterback going in this Sunday against Philadelphia. Everything else permitted. But I mean, the offensive line, like I said, this season overall has been pretty good. They've only had 28 sacks. 20 of them felt like they were against Dallas.
Yeah, I think losing Roulier was a crusher. And then when you're losing the second and the third and the fourth string centers, it's just the centers are making so many of those calls. So then you're putting it back on the quarterback. You're putting it probably on Scherf as well. And it's just, you lose that center and you lose somebody as good as Roulier. It's just, I don't know how they were as good as they were in the past couple of weeks.
Roulier was the first extension as well of the Ron Rivera era, and a very underrated member of this offensive line. And they're down to Keith Ismail now. I think they got some John Tooth action in there as well.
I mean, I'm looking at the grades and I see way too many people on here with the position of center. That's way too many people playing that position.
Brandon Scherf taking snaps at practice today at center. That is a crazy thing to read. I think some of the only good news coming out of the offensive line side of it. Charles Leno only missing 6 snaps. I think he finished with a 76.8 grade on Sunday. But losing Larson, talking about the center position, losing Larson as well. That's gonna. I mean, Larson. There were reports of him coming in kind of during training camp and getting a lot of reps, and he was doing some good stuff there as well. So he is also lost. Definitely not as big of a loss as Chase Roulier, but getting very slim at center. But back to running the ball. That Washington team ran the ball 23 times on Sunday. A lot like Philadelphia, it like I said, it kind of correlates with the win streak they got going on here. But I think if there is any good news going into this Sunday is that the Washington football team is possibly getting back one J.D. McKissick. Antonio Gibson kind of down bad right now, not getting any more time on the field after his fumble on Sunday. Jared Patterson, kind of a fan favorite. I think he had 12 snaps on Sunday. Jonathan Williams signed from the practice squad. I think he had 2 less snaps, but definitely I would say made more of an impact. Who, in your opinion, should get the brunt of the carries on Sunday against Philadelphia? Who did you see the most out of?
I think it's always Gibson. If he keeps fumbling it, no. But I think McKissick is perfect in his role. He's absolutely perfect in that third down role. But he's a much better pass protector than Gibson. So if we go down by a lot early, go down late or whatnot, you'll see more McKissick. But I think Gibson is the better rusher. And but if he keeps fumbling the ball, put it on anybody else.
I've been talking a lot about snaps, and there's definitely a shout out to Bleeding Burgundy. They talked a little bit about this on their show. Great soundbite. What is going on with Curtis Samuel, Nick? This is getting outrageous. Now we're being told it's a hamstring injury. Being told he's on a limited pitch count. Well, this pitch count goes more and more. 20 snaps last week, 14 this week. I mean, if you go on some fantasy apps, he's not even I don't think he has a position listed. It's almost like he's not even playing for the Washington football team out of sight, out of mind. I mean, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel with this Curtis Samuel situation, or are these Paul Richardson comparisons finally starting to make sense? I know it's 1 year. We're in year one.
No, I know. I don't think there's a light at the end of the tunnel this year. In the future, yes, next couple of years when he can finally have a full offseason heal. When you get these soft tissue injuries, it's tough to come back from them and never be 100%. But it's not looking great. It doesn't help when your head trainer is being investigated by the DEA. So, yeah, I don't see how he comes back and really contributes at all this season. But hopefully next year you get what you thought you were going to get, and that's somebody who is electric in the slot, electric out wide, electric anywhere you put him, as long as he gets the ball in his hands.
Just would think he would get some of the snaps that maybe DeAndre Carter is getting, and it's definitely sad to see things kind of, especially after comments that Steve Smith made. I made a video about that on the channel. A lot of people were talking, and you don't want to write the young man off, first year of his contract with the Washington football team. I definitely, though, say as 2021 is concerned, you just need to shut it down. Going into Sunday, Washington football team's already down 4 defensive ends, 2 centers, no right tackle, which thankfully he's back, no running back. Logan Thomas finally finding out that it was in fact an ACL tear, which is awful news. You already lost Fitzpatrick. You lose John Bostic, and you're down to your 4th kicker, for Christ's sake, and that was before Dallas. So, I mean, this is a downward slide we're going on, and I'm really glad you brought the Ryan Vermillion situation, because it's not like Dan Snyder can have all the scandal. That really has taken a big toll on the Washington football team. Of course, there is no timeline on his return, so it seems like things are going to continue to be dismal. But it's kind of on a positive note. Go to the defensive side of the ball. A guy you already spoke about, Cole Holcomb, playing 84% of the snaps on Sunday for the Washington football team, 82.4 grade per PFF. There's one guy I want to focus on that hasn't really been playing too hot. That is one Jamin Davis, who finished Sunday with 40 snaps. You already knew it was coming, Nick. You already knew it was coming. As soon as you said you're coming on the show, you already knew it was coming.
Every podcast is what's wrong with Jamin Davis. What's wrong with Jamin Davis?
Well, I mean, losing Bostic, definitely forced Washington football team's hand. I'm going to give Jamin some credit, right? But to me, it's all about perspective and context. You had fans who were in their feelings talking about, Micah Parsons, and there was some weird stuff going on the timeline. Jamin, of course, was being considered to play emergency defensive end along with David Mayo on Sunday. It was getting that slim. Of course, Jamin doesn't have that versatility to his game. We all know where his game is strong, and we're kind of still waiting to see some of that stuff. But at this point in the 2021 season, are you satisfied where Jamin Davis is for the Washington football team, being the 19th overall pick of this draft class?
I don't think you could ever say you're satisfied with how he's played, but I would prefer him playing now compared to just Bostic playing and him playing like maybe 5-10 snaps. Like I said, in every podcast asked me, and I say the same thing. Rookie linebackers are much like rookie quarterbacks, in that you want them in there and you want them to not suck, but you want them to go through some bad moments so they can learn from it. And something with him that I've seen in other games is when he makes a mistake on one thing, he's not going to make that same mistake a second time in that game. So that's always something that's positive. I just think it was a tough spot for him in the pick. I was never a huge fan of the pick because I think, as we all have now seen, is that he's a developmental type of guy. Like, he's not going to step in day one and be Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons was a stud. Everyone knew he was the first linebacker. Everybody knew he was going to be good. No one thought that he'd be this good. But Davis was, pre-draft was seen like maybe somebody 3rd, 4th round. He just kind of shot up boards late in the process. And he's just a developmental guy that's going to take time. And, that kind of sucks if you're trying to fight for a playoff spot and you have your starting linebacker out there struggling. But I think this is what's best for his career, is to keep playing and, and honestly keep struggling, because the linebacker position is, I think, one of the hardest positions in football, because there's just so much just chaos that's thrown in front of your face and you have to make split-second decisions every single play.
Of course, I've been very outspoken on how I feel about Jamin Davis, and you've been hammered with it pretty much every show you went on. And no one wants to be more wrong about this than me. And I kind of wanted somebody that kind of came in and would be an instant producer. But like you said, there's the parallel with the quarterback position. Guys like Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly, believe it or not, and I'm not saying he's going to be Luke Kuechly, but some of the best linebackers in the National Football League don't exactly come in and have an instant impact. It takes them kind of 2 to 3 years to kind of get involved, but kind of course, get acclimated to the game. This isn't Kentucky. So I have seen flashes from Jamin Davis. They are very seldom. But I think viewing him as a developmental prospect was always the best way to go into the season. It's just, I feel like as usual, per usual, us Watch Football Team fans like to put hefty expectations on anyone who comes in the building.
Yeah, I mean, he was a first-round pick, so he had those expectations, and that's nothing against him, but that's just where he was drafted. You're a first-round pick. You're thought
parallels to Parsons as well. I mean,
yep.
defensive rookie of the year.
Eight picks later than Parsons. I mean, you're going to get those comparisons. They don't play similar roles. They don't have similar play styles at all. I just think he was put in a bad spot being picked 19th overall. And it could work out in a couple years, but I just think this was always going to be the plan. It's going to take a couple years.
Yeah, and I'm not going to name drop, but we've heard the same thing about other players that have been taken the first round to watch full team. You kind of wait for them to blossom. But Jamin, of course, has all the athletic ability in the world and certainly checks all Ron Rivera's boxes. So it's more of a wait and see approach. But it's not like you can't call him a bust just yet. I mean, but you certainly want to see more from him moving forward. And I'm glad that you pointed out that him and Parsons had two completely different play styles. Personally, I never want to see Jamin put his hand in the dirt. If Jamin's putting his hand in the dirt, we're in a bad spot, and that bad spot actually almost happened on Sunday. But speaking of pass rush, very slim going into this matchup. Of course, you're already down Chase Young, Montez Sweat for the season. Daniel Wise, 70 snaps. Shaka Toney, 52 snaps. Rotimi, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that first name. Sorry, Chris Russell. 44 snaps. William Bradley King, 4 snaps and 1 fight. So good stat line there. And Nate Orchard signed by the Washington Football Team this week. Kind of a feel-good story back in 2019. Been with 10 teams overall throughout his National Football League career, reuniting in the burgundy and gold. I guess the question is, Nick, could this pass rush look any worse heading into Sunday versus Philadelphia? I don't think I've seen anything like this ever, and we haven't even gotten into the COVID stuff yet.
I mean, it sucks. Like everyone always says, with injuries, you can deal with, a couple injuries to key guys, but you can't deal with the constant injuries to one single position over and over and over again. We're seeing that at center, and we're seeing that at defensive line, defensive end. It's a nightmare. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think Deron Payne is the only person that isn't on some sort of injury or COVID list. I think we're literally the only one that has had a snap this year who isn't on some sort of list. I don't know. I don't know how they would put this together. I would love to, have a week off of work and not have to work an NFL weekend on Sunday, but I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. I have no idea how they piece this together.
Well, I mean, I keep referencing COVID. So before today, you already had Montez Sweat, James Smith-Williams, Casey Tuhill, William Bradley King, Jonathan Allen, Tim Settle, Khalid Hudson, David Mayo, Kendall Fuller, Tamarick Hemingway on the COVID list. Just today, Wednesday, December 15, 2021, Kyle Allen, Matthew Ioannidis, Cornelius Lucas, Samus Reyes, Cam Sims, Derek Forrest, Troy Apke. Of course, you get a little bit of a sprinkle in their news of Samuel Cosme coming back. That is good news for the Washington Football Team. But just to delve into this COVID stuff a little bit for the people that aren't familiar with it, this is an NFL thing right now across the league. Baker Mayfield, other top stars in the National Football League testing positive for the coronavirus. The NFL doctors are reporting that 86% of positive COVID cases are among players and employees and have come from outside team facilities. The league did kind of speak on this a little bit, issued a memo to its teams on Monday evening instructing all Tier 1 and Tier 2 staff members that they are required to receive the booster by December 27th. If they do not receive the booster, they will lose their vaccination status, so that's a very big development. Coaches and trainers fall into that Tier 1 category. General managers, front office workers, and other football operations staffers are Tier 2 employees. Players are also technically Tier 1 employees, but the NFL Player Association previously negotiated a new protocol that allows them to decline the vaccine. Washington Football Team also had a Tier 3 employee be the first person league-wide to test positive for the Omicron variant, so that's definitely not a good first for the Washington Football Team. These Tier 3 employees have a lot of involvement inside the building as well. So the Washington Football Team has been on some enhanced protocols throughout the week this week, doing a lot of stuff virtually as well. No word on whether Sweat and any of these guys will actually be available on Sunday. It's not looking good. The 10 that I first mentioned all tested positive. And as far as the protocol for that, like I said, for the people that aren't familiar with it, because some aren't, players that are vaccinated can return after having 2 negative tests separated after 24 hours, of course, if they're asymptomatic. Those that are not vaccinated have to isolate for at least 10 days before testing out of protocols. I did hear that Settle is vaccinated. Fuller is not vaccinated. I don't think Montez Sweat is vaccinated. That's all up to those guys. But, we talk about this pass rush, Nick, back to football. This really hurts. This entire COVID situation today really hurts this secondary. You're already down Benjamin St. Juste. You lose McTire kind of early in the season. You don't really have that depth. Of course, Danny Johnson's kind of stepped in and done some good things for the Washington football team. But, Troy Apke also being added to the list. You maybe look at guys like Corn Elder, Jeremy Reeves, who's only played one snap this season. Looks like he's going to get a lot of snaps this Sunday against the Eagles. Do you think that COVID hit this secondary the hardest? I mean, I think that's easy to say.
I got no clue who's stepping on the field on Sunday. Absolutely no clue who's going to play what position. We'll probably have guys who we've never heard of play. But I do love Jeremy Reeves. So anytime he gets to see the field, I love me some Jeremy Reeves. I don't know. Losing Kendall Fuller is ginormous. If you lose him and you lose Jonathan Allen, I don't know how you stop anybody. And on the offensive side, we've already talked about, I don't know how you score. I mean, it's just, there's nothing you can do about it. The injuries, the COVID, it all happens. And again, I don't know how they manage it. I don't know how they're going to put a full team on the field. Heisman
Trophy winner awaits on the other side of the line of scrimmage, one Devontae Smith. And I don't know how many guys in that secondary that I really feel like could actually guard Devontae.
I'd take William Jackson in that battle. William Jackson been a lot better.
It's William Jackson versus the world. If it's Deron Payne versus the world, it's William Jackson versus the world. And there's only so many things William Jackson can really do. And, let's go to Philly a little bit. Philly, of course, on the absolute opposite side of the spectrum, they could not be coming into this matchup any better. They're coming off the bye. They're also 6-7. Per PFF, you got a lot of guys shining for this Philadelphia Eagles team. Kind of an underrated team, in my opinion. Not a really popular take. Everybody assume we're going to sweep them. Jason Kelce, 84.3 PFF grade coming into this week against the Washington football team. Jalen Hurts, even though he's having a little bit of a quarterback controversy with Gardner Minshew right now, 80 overall, I think, PFF grade coming into this matchup. Miles Sanders, 578 yards on 112 stretched out carries. Had a nice little 100-yard game against the Jets. Really, really good game for the Philadelphia Eagles overall. Of course, you got that pass rush with Fletcher Cox playing well as well. But this running back committee, man, you got Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, Keith Gainwell. I mean, you got a lot of these guys who are extremely well rested. Jordan Howard's gone literally a month without any contact, so he's going to come into this matchup very healthy. Devontae Smith already talking a little bit elbow injury, but he was at the Heisman ceremony, looked alive and well. But I mean, if there's two guys in particular I really want to put a spotlight on, they made the third quarter All-Pro PFF team. Darius Slay and Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce allows 15 pressures in 13 games. Absolute run blocking monster. Darius Slay within the last month, fumble return touchdown and an interception touchdown. He's allowed a 71.2 passer rating. Of course, these are two guys that the Washington team is going to have to look out for, especially with how they're coming into this matchup. But who concerns you the most coming in this Philadelphia matchup on paper?
I think it's Darius Slay, because if you don't have Terry McLaurin, I don't see anybody getting open against him. He's been on an insane hot streak this season with just kind of everything falling his way, and it's not just out of pure luck. He's been playing great. If you don't have Terry's kind of not really owned him, but there's been a lot of great.
There's a mutual respect between the two, as well.
They do definitely respect each other, and Terry's kind of gotten his way a couple of times in the past when Slay was on the Lions. Not as much so on the Eagles, but that would be fun to watch. I'd love to see those two guys go at it again. Darius Slay is someone to sort of stay away from.
For sure. And one of the fastest cornerbacks in the National Football League as well. But, as far as pass catchers are concerned, Philadelphia kind of getting hit by the COVID bug as well. Quez Watkins put on the reserve COVID list. That's his second season, kind of a breakout guy for them. You look at the numbers, 31 catches, 491 yards. One of the NFC leaders, 6 overall in yards per catch, 15.8. So they're losing kind of one of their big chunk play kind of guys going into this matchup. Whoever's going to be under center, that is. I haven't heard anything in regards to that. And, of course, it's going to be kind of a guessing game going in Sunday. You would assume Jalen Hurts seems to be his team, even though there's a lot of doubts about it in the offseason. But you want to go number one target, if you want to make an argument, it's definitely Dallas Goddard at this point. Top 3 tight end in the National Football League. He has 26 catches, 380 yards, tied with Travis Kelce for most in the league. Of course, Zach Ertz traded to the Arizona Cardinals. So this is Dallas Goddard's position now, or his tight end room. 85.9 grade coming in. We talked about the linebacker position a little bit, Nick, and This is not a good matchup for this Washington football team. Slim defense or not, Dallas has always kind of had success against the Washington football team as well. Is this a concern for you going into Sunday? I mean, it feels like everything's a concern at this point, but Dallas has had a breakout year.
Like I said, we don't know who's going to be on the field. So, I mean, it's tough to kind of be like, yeah, this is who he's going to be going against. I think he would see a lot of Landon Collins, a lot of Cam Curl, a lot of Cole Holcomb. I trust Cam Curl more than anybody on that defense besides Jonathan Allen. I love me some Cam Curl. But yeah, tight end, I mean, Zach Ertz has always killed this team in the past. And Dallas Goddard is a carbon copy of him. They actually wear the exact same gear. It's very annoying when you're watching their game and trying to figure out which
variant.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, he's having a breakout year. He's a very good player. But again, you just have no idea who's going to be on the defense. You
don't know who to worry about, honestly. Like it's hard to really pinpoint it on one thing. And I've been talking about this running game in knowledge, and of course, spoke a little bit about Jordan Howard, but Keith Gainwell, another guy. You talked to a lot of draft guys around the Washington football team fan base, Twitterverse, and a lot of people wanted Keith Gainwell coming in out of the draft. This year, 12 games, 447 yards, first Eagles rookie to be taken in the 5th round. And have 200 yards rushing and receiving. And he was honestly, if Minshew's on the field, Minshew's main weapon in his start against the Jets. 13 routes, 5 receptions, 32 yards. So kind of a guy that they look to a lot coming out of the backfield is Keith Gainwell. So it's like you really can't even sit here and say that this is going to be the X factor for this Washington football team coming in to this matchup because, I mean, they're just really coming in so slim. And, it really does feel like all the advantage goes to Philadelphia. Of course, it is that time of the show, brought to you by our sponsor, Prizepicks. We talk about this Sunday's matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. Call it like we see it. Make sure you use promo code SSNWFT for a 100% instant deposit bonus match. Eagles minus 4.5, Lincoln Financial Field. I feel like that's a little generous, barring all the news recently. Sunday, December 19th, 1 p.m. First game against the Eagles since winning the division, which feels like it was eons ago.
Right.
Over under 43.5. Nick? Taking the over, taking the under. Who you got, and who is your player of the game?
Oh boy, I think this is the toughest question you asked me because again, we have no clue who's going to be on the field.
It's Wednesday, and it almost feels too early to be talking about all this due to everything that is happening. It's chaos.
I think that line's going to keep moving in the favor of the Eagles. Again, I think you need an incredible performance from Heineke, and the Eagles team is very similar to Washington. They have a lot of good pieces around there. They have a lot of good pieces on defense, some good pieces on offense, and they're very, very dependent on whether or not Jalen Hurts plays well. And we're the exact same way with Taylor Heineke. So if you get good Jalen Hurts, I don't know how you stop that. I don't know how you stop this team with guys coming off the streets. I don't know how you score with guys coming off the streets. So I'd say player of the game, just because I want them to win, would be Taylor Heineke, because that's the only way you have a chance of winning is if we get good Heineke.
For me, it's you kind of talk about this Philly team across the board. The biggest strength of their Super Bowl win back in 2017 was that defensive line, and you still got some faces from that. And when this defensive line is going, man, they're one of the best in the National Football League. And this run defense for Philadelphia as well, and I don't know if I mentioned it or not, this run defense for Philly is absolutely stout, and we've already got a struggling running game coming in. So you got kind of a running back who's down his luck. So I feel like you kind of have to pick Taylor Heineke or maybe a guy like J.D. McKissick. If the Washington football team is winning, those are the only two guys I feel like would have really good games, or they would have to have really good games. For the first time in over a month, I'm taking the Eagles. I'm picking against the Washington football team. 27-16 MVP. I got kicker from the Philadelphia Eagles, Jake Elliott, and I'm going to take the under as well. Nick, at the end of the day, man, you're a numbers guy. I'm a realist. Some will say I'm a nihilist, but this is just too much to overcome for the Washington football team. It really is. And, it's been a Cinderella story for Taylor Heineke, but even he can't overcome what is in front of him this Sunday. And I know that isn't the rah-rah stuff that everybody's used to listening to on the show, on the pod, but I mean, at the end of the day, man, these are unforeseen circumstances, and the NFL cannot shut down the league. This is not the NBA. The NFL, the show must go on, and it's either play or forfeit. And if they're playing with guys they took off the street. And this just isn't something that's ideal, or something that I don't even think this coaching staff, which is a great coaching staff, no matter what people think, Scott Turner, offensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio, masterclass, the defensive coordinator, they were already working with depth and just pour onto that and amplify and make it 5 times worse. And that's what they're dealing with now. So you think that's a little harsh, Nick? I really don't feel like this is a good this is not going to be a good game for the Washington football team.
I'll say one thing, and when it comes to just gambling and that point spread, every single time you think, all right, there's no way this team has any chance, there's no shot, everything's going against them, nothing's going in their favor, it always turns out the other way. So I will say that one thing, we have so much going in the opposite of our favor that I think we have a good chance. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why we have a good chance, but I don't know.
It's that moxie, Nick. It's Taylor Heineke's moxie.
I'm telling you, if you get good Taylor Heinicke, he is the most entertaining quarterback I've seen play for Washington in a long, long time.
And it's funny. What gets me is that I saw some people talking about this on Twitter. I saw multiple people say if Taylor was under center in that last 2-minute drive against the Cowboys, would we have went to overtime? You're lying to yourself if you say no. I mean, look. There are not many quarterbacks in the NFC East, maybe in the National Football League, that I have this weird trust in Taylor in those 2-minute drills. That's really where he thrives. It just none of it makes any sense. And I can't put a finger on it.
We would be having a different conversation if the Raiders interception was caught. But like you said, so there's something about him. Like anyone ever asked me about Heinicke, I don't have a good answer for him because there's nothing about him that makes sense. The way he throws the ball, the way he maneuvers in the pocket, his noodle arm, all of it all somehow works out for him. And again, I have no idea how he does it. But you just got to get him near a pylon and good things happen.
I would absolutely look, man. I went absolutely batshit when that happened. I lost my mind. As soon as that play happened, I was like, we're going to win this game. Nothing could change my mind. I don't know why. And I do kind of pity the people that are going to have to make decisions if the Washington football team does squeak their way into the playoffs. How are you going to be able to pry Taylor away from this locker room? Because, I mean, everybody loves him. We can't put a finger on it, but these guys play with him every Sunday. And unfortunately, you have become a Taylor apologist here on the Sidelines Washington Football Podcast today. So, Nick, unfortunately, that is all the time we have. Appreciate your time, man. Second time on the show here at Sidelines this year. Tell listeners where they can find you, brother, and all your good work.
Yep, just Twitter at @PFF_Nick Akridge. Yeah, it's just basically me making fun of myself, making fun of this team when it goes bad, and then sometimes I'll be posting some good grades, but only when they win because that's when people actually like me. When they lose is when I get people yelling at me for Landon Collins grades, yelling at me for everything. It's a lot of fun to read my mentions sometimes when I put those grades up, but
this just doesn't make any sense. You don't even know what you're talking about. I swear, it's like PFF is a trigger word. And I know I say this every time you come on, but it's like every time I reference a grade, I get I was there. I saw it. I book those grades. I mean, it's
trust me. I hear all of it in my there are some people that love us. There are some people that despise us. And no matter what you tell them, no matter what plays you show them, they will never think that we are correct. And I have always said, ever since I've worked here, because I was a skeptic before I actually worked for PFF. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. They don't know what they're doing. They can't possibly figure this out. We are never going to get everything 100% right. It's just not possible because, like everyone has pointed out and constantly points out, we don't know the play call. We don't know their assignments. But what we do know is based off of a certain concept, a certain play call, play design, how things should go. And 90% of the time, 95% of the time, we're pretty accurate with what we're doing. There's obviously going to be some gray area where we don't know everything, but I think it's the best way to sort of, kind of break down a player and see what he does instead of just looking at a box score, because those box score stats will always lie to you.
Always. And I thought the Landon thing was a perfect representation of that.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, the Sidelines Washington podcast is definitely pro PFF. So thank you for your time, man. Everybody listen, make sure you check out the Sidelines website as well. Got some good stuff going over there. Got a couple new articles up. Of course, I'm the head of NFL operations here at the Sidelines Sports Network. So if you or anyone you know is interested in covering their favorite NFL franchise, one of the fastest rising sporting networks sitting at 127K, make sure you email me, silence_WFT@gmail.com. Join the family today. Also, make sure you follow us on all social medias, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. Got the link tree in all bios. Give us a follow. See you guys after Philadelphia. Hoping the outcome's a lot different than what I'm anticipating. But until then, this is the SSN signing off. Peace.